Hello, welcome back to the Shoogly Shed. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit different. I was obviously working on the wheels last time. The back wheel, I've kind of going to go down the route of getting an axle machined up. I was considering doing it myself on my lathe. However, it needs to be like 340mm long, like 34cm long, which is quite long for my lathe bed, and turning something that precise on a lathe like that at that length could prove very, very difficult and waste a lot of quite expensive material. And not only that, but I might just never get there, or even if I do, it might take a long time. I'm satisfied that if I outsource that aspect of it, someone can machine me a spindle, and then I've still got a bunch of other spacers and stuff to machine, and I think that still qualifies as me doing most of the work. So you know, you take the rough with the smooth. I think knowing my limits is the smart move here, and not trying to I don't know, not trying to bodge a job that really needs to be done properly. Like your rear spindle, literally your life depends on it, so let's not get that wrong. Anyway, as I say, moving away from that just now, while I figure that one out, I'm going to have a look at the foot pegs and shifters and things, the rear sets on the XJR1300. Basically, I did go down the route of having a look at what sort of off-the-shelf upgrades and different models of bike that you can make fit these bikes. But as with most things on this bike, I quite fancy a go at machining things myself and making my own customs. So I guess at the end of the day, that's what, you know, how I'm going to put my personal touch and my mark on this bike, is making as many parts as I can myself and making it really unique. So with that in mind, let's have a wee look at what foot pegs I have to work with. This is the right hand foot peg and rear brake lever from the XJR. It's pretty standard, these kind of rubber coated, like flick down with a little sort of skid plate thing here. Doesn't look like that's ever been grounded out, so maybe otherwise been dropped, that's the only thing. And then we've got this sort of knurl pattern brake lever. I would quite like to turn my own sort of cylindrical foot pegs to fit into this. I reckon if I make sort of cylindrical ones and then flatten off the edges, they'll fit quite nicely in there. Not 100% sure what I'm going to make them out of yet, but I'm going to do a couple of test pieces and then figure that one out. And then the next thing also is, this is, you know, actually it fits the aesthetic of the bike quite nicely from stock. Not 100% sure what I'm going to do, if anything, to the brake lever, but the gear shifter I do have a little plan for, which I think could be quite cool. So I was messing about on the lathe the other day and trying out some different techniques and styles that I haven't, you know, tried before, and I knocked up this little test piece. So essentially there's a sort of ribbed groove kind of pattern, sort of rounded edges. The way it's made is with a little tool. This tool here. So effectively I've got a rounded edge on one side, and the other side is a sort of scoop almost. You basically go along the workpiece doing the troughs, as it were, and then flip the tool around and round off the peaks, or vice versa. I'm not sure if there's a best procedure which way to do it, but that's effectively the way I did it. And as you can see, that kind of fits in there quite nicely, and you basically just go along it, turn them like that. I've also just gone over it with a bit of Abernet cloth as well, just to polish it up a wee bit and really get those peaks and troughs rounded and smooth, and I think that's a pretty cool result. I have seen people do this online before, and a good friend of mine, Lindsay, LC Cycle Works, gave me the tips that I needed to make that tool and produce this piece. So hopefully, you know, if you've got a lathe out there, you can maybe knock up a tool like that. It doesn't take much grinding to make that, and then turn out some cool parts like this that they seem way harder to make than they actually are, so it's quite cool to share that knowledge. I think I'm really pleased with this. It's made out of aluminium. I'm really pleased with it. I don't think I could do much better, to be honest. I did spend a lot of time making it look nice, so I reckon as a test piece it worked really well. I'll maybe do a little demonstration and show you how I made it, but I'm probably going to go with this, part it off at this junction here, and these were just other sort of things I was turning for practice, part it off at this junction here and then use this effectively as my gear shifter. I'll need to figure out a way of mounting it to the existing gear shifter pedal shaft thing. So yeah, we'll have to cross that bridge, but yeah, I'll chuck a little bit of round bar in the lathe and show you a bit of how this is made. Okay, a little bit of cutting paste on my tool there. Helps with the finish and also tool life. Lay it on. Just going to move it along a touch. So you watch. You slowly push this in to the contacts. Size. And the tool height's a little high. Bring this down a touch. You basically don't want to bring this further down than center or the workpiece will start to jump on the tool. Let's try again. There we go. Alright. And then I'm basically going to, obviously you should mark this out if you're trying to do it precisely, but this is just a demonstration. Move it along. Go again. Nice. Clear those chips, ribbons. Go. Move it along again. There. And we'll go for it again. Alright, happy with that. So, as you can see, we've got our 3 troughs, these sort of flat bits up here. So next thing I'm going to do is flip the tool round and take down those peaks. You can see we're starting to get that grooved pattern. Last thing I'm going to do is flip the tool around one more time and just bring the troughs in just a wee bit more. I've got these nice rounded peaks here. Just going to bring the troughs in a wee bit more just to define them slightly more. And that's basically us. So obviously you can get a better finish with polishing it up and marking it out properly, but as a wee demonstration, I hope that makes sense. They're pretty uniform. It's basically just that way of use the same tool to cut each bit, they're all going to be uniform. And like I say, if you use a bit of layout fluid maybe and mark out your precise increments, you'll just make them even more uniform. But I think that's a pretty cool result, just to show you an example. Like I said, I'm really happy with that piece I made earlier, so I'm probably going to go ahead and use that. But yeah, maybe if you've got a lathe you can turn a little tool like that and start knocking out wee parts like this. Something cool. Sharing knowledge, right? As I said earlier, Lindsay from LC Cycle Works basically showed me how to make them. He's been doing it for years and years. I think Lindsay did like an apprenticeship in lathe work and machining small parts, so he's you know, an old hand at this kind of thing, and the little tips and tricks to make, you know, things like I said earlier look really hard to make but actually are fairly straightforward with a little bit of know-how. Lindsay's also been super helpful just with general advice in machining, even with like making the wheel spacers and stuff. He's been right at the end of a WhatsApp message and been yeah, helping me out, so thanks very much, Lindsay. I really appreciate the help, mate. It's I feel like little apprentice up in Scotland and he's down in Wales, just keeping me right. Anyway, next thing I want to do is to have a look at cutting up some bars for making footrests. Effectively, I want them to be made out of stainless steel. I was going to make them out of aluminium, but just a little bit extra strength, I'm going to go for stainless steel. They're going to be, hopefully, the same sort of length as the original foot pegs, just with a couple of interesting aesthetic choices along them, be that some grooves like this or maybe just some flat grooves. And then also I'm going to have a go at knurling some patterns on them to provide a bit of extra grip. Right, so the next thing to do is to take the rubber off the shifter here and then this is like a steel insert to an aluminium shaft. I need to decide if I'm going to try and press that out and put a bolt through it instead to bolt the new aluminium one on, or if I can maybe thread this and we'll cut it off and thread it so that it threads on. Not sure yet, but there's going to be a way to do it, so let's get the rubber off first and have a look. Right, so that worked reasonably well. We've got the pressed in stud here with about, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch of M8 125 thread. So hopefully with that there, what I can do now is cut off that practice piece I made, wherever I put it, there. Cut that off here, bore this out and tap a thread down the bottom of it so that that will effectively just thread onto there. See if we can do it. Right, so what I've done is faced that off in the lathe, and then I've just drilled basically a blind hole the depth of this stud. Basically the bottom portion of the hole is sized for an M8 thread to be tapped into it, and the top is sized for clearance. So that should basically push onto there and then start threading on when I tap a thread. So let's do that next. What do you think of that? Pretty cool, eh? So that is effectively the gear shifter rubber, this thing, replaced with my ribbed aluminium thing. That's pretty cool. I'm really pleased with that. Keeps the whole sort of aluminium look going. It's nice to be able to utilise this pressed in stud. Yeah. Undecided as to what coatings these are going to get, if they're going to get just polished up aluminium or if I'm going to powder coat anything, I'm not sure, but yeah, really pleased with that. That's a cool result and a good use for something that was just effectively a practice piece at the heart of it, so yeah, cool. Right, in the spirit of making use of practice pieces, this was a foot peg that I turned the other day, just out of interest to see what I could turn with the lathe that might fit up. What I've done is just filed these profiles flat so that it goes into the foot peg mount like that, and then it can fold up and down. All I did to pretty basic, I just smooth the thing off and then put in a little bit of grooving in here, which I quite like. However, I want to utilise my groovy tool and try and make these match up with the foot shifter as well, which would be cool. So I'm going to basically try and change these grooves to the rounded grooves, and then the middle sections I'm going to think about knurling them, using my knurling tool, in order to provide that extra bit of grip. It's your foot peg after all, you don't need your foot to be slipping all over the shop. Okay, I've just cut off another piece of aluminium bar, and we're going to face it off and start making a second foot peg before we switch round to the knurling operation. Right, so that's those two turned. Obviously I've matched up the grooves on these. Only thing to do now is to knurl them. Knurling tool, I'll show you in a wee second, basically adds that kind of diamond crisscross pattern that you're maybe familiar with. Aesthetically, but also it adds a lot of grip to the pegs, and like I said earlier, seeing as foot pegs, you want them to be grippy. Alright, so this is a knurling tool. If you can just see those sort of diagonal cuts in these wheels, there's one at the bottom as well. Effectively you push the workpiece into these and they work together to cut a diamond pattern on the workpiece. So I'll show you that now. So first thing I'm going to do is use a centre drill to drill a little divot in the end of the peg that I can put a live centre into. This will hold the piece, you know, still, stop it wobbling, because I'm going to have quite a lot of stick out, like more than you would want. So I'm just going to put a little bit of grease on my live centre. Again, prevents the tool wearing out prematurely. Bring it into that divot, nice and snug. Lock that off. When we spin the workpiece, it spins much more concentrically. Basically, you don't want to have, you know, this amount of stick out spinning without something like this, because the workpiece would basically end up wobbling about like that, and then your knurling won't be very neat. Right, with all that adjusted, just going to true up my knurler, lock it down, and we can commence the operation. So we're just going to kiss the piece. It's not the neatest knurling I've done, but it's not bad. the interests of clarity, that's scrap. The first one I did, the knurling wasn't coming out right and I couldn't really figure out why, but when I've taken out the chuck I can see why. Can you see this? So effectively I hadn't clamped this tight enough in the chuck, don't know if you can see that, and as the knurler was moving along the piece it was very slowly moving the piece into the chuck. Not a lot, just enough that the knurler basically came out of the grooves it was creating and it's just gone a bit AWOL really, and yeah, caused very uneven knurling. The other one is perfect, came out great. So I'm gonna have to remake this, which is frustrating, but this is how you learn. You make mistakes and you learn, and that's the important thing. I'll shoot you some close-ups and you can see what I mean. This is what the knurling should look like. Nice uniform diamonds. This is the scrap piece. See, there's not much uniformity there at all. And is actually, I mean, it's just completely devoured itself in places. Whereas this one is nice and uniform more or less the whole way around. So that's good to go. I'm pleased with this. This is a learning experience. Maybe I'll make some spacers out of it at some point. Into the scrap bin it goes. But this, I think this is a success. I'm really pleased with that, how that turned out, and so yeah, I don't know. I think I'm pretty pleased with this. I'm going to try and recreate another one. How many goes I take to achieve that, I don't know, but let's chuck this in the rear set and see what it looks like. I think that looks really smart. Way better than the rubber equivalents. And the knurling's nice and neat, really chuffed with this one. Obviously I'm going to have to remake the other one, but you know, you take the rough with the smooth. It folds up quite nicely, folds down again, and then we've got a little foot shift here. Yeah, I know, I'm pretty pleased with these. I think, yeah, I think I can forgive myself the mistake on the other one. You know, like I say, you live and learn. And yeah, take this as a victory for today and then come back to it with fresh eyes and just replicate it on the other side. It's always a hard thing in machining, is replicating something. It's fine turning apart, but then trying to make two identical is another ball game. Anyway, this is where I'm going to wrap up this episode. I will hopefully see you in the next one. Thank you for everyone for watching. I really do appreciate all the support. As ever, as always, please do like, comment and subscribe to the Shoogly Shed channel, and I will hopefully see you in the next episode. Not going to say what it is yet because I'm not entirely sure, but we'll figure something out. Maybe I'll try and get an axle sorted, maybe I don't know, figure something else out in the bike. There's plenty to do. I'm not short of jobs to be getting on with. Take care. Goodbye.